They said he killed his brides on their wedding nights, that their screams echoed through blood moon territory until dawn broke silent and cold. I was shaking in a white dress stained with my own tears when Alpha King Adrian Blackthorne finally entered our wedding chamber. His eyes glowing amber in the darkness, his presence filling every corner of the room like a living storm. I waited for the pain, for the violence everyone promised would come. But instead he fell to his knees before me and whispered 3 words that shattered everything I thought I knew. "You're my mate." Before we carry on, please hit the subscribe button to make my day and let me know where you are watching from in the comments. My name is Emilia Rosewood, and 6 days ago I believe my life held some small measure of freedom. I worked at the Moonstone Diner on the edge of Silverbrook territory, saving coins in a jar beneath my bed, dreaming of a cottage somewhere far from my stepfather's house. That dream died the moment Marcus Hale stumbled through our front door with blood on his shirt and terror painted across his weathered face. I was upstairs folding laundry when I heard the crash. The basket slipped from my hands, sheets tumbling across the wooden floor as heavy footsteps thundered through the house below. My mother's voice rose sharp with panic, a sound I'd learned to fear more than any threat from the wolves that prowled our borders. I crept to the top of the stairs, pressing myself against the wall where shadows gathered thick. "You promised me more time," Marcus was saying, his words slurred with whatever alcohol he'd consumed at whatever gambling den had finally tired of extending him credit. "I told Reeves I'd have his money by the full moon. He can't do this. He can't just take everything." "What have you done?" My mother, Lydia, spoke with the cold precision she reserved for her husband's failures. "How much do you owe this time?" The silence stretched so long I thought perhaps Marcus had collapsed. But then he laughed. The sound held no humor, only the brittle edge of a man watching his world crumble to ash. 30,000 silver marks, plus interest, plus the penalties for missing payments. I heard my mother's sharp intake of breath. 30,000 marks represented more wealth than our family would see in 5 lifetimes. Marcus worked sporadically at the mill when they'd have him, and my mother's seamstress income barely kept food on our table. I earned what I could at the diner, but most of my wages disappeared into Marcus's pockets before I could hide them. "They'll take the house," Lydia said flatly. "They'll take everything. Where will we go? What will we do?" "There might be another way." Marcus's voice dropped lower, and I had to strain to hear his next words. "Reeves mentioned something. Said the debt could be forgiven entirely if we could offer something of equal value. We have nothing of equal value. Everything we own wouldn't cover 1/10 of what you owe." "Not everything." The way Marcus said those 2 words sent ice cascading down my spine. "We have Emilia." The world tilted beneath me. I gripped the banister to keep from falling, my knuckles white against the dark wood. Surely I'd misheard. Surely my own stepfather wasn't suggesting what every instinct screamed he was suggesting. "What are you saying?" My mother's voice had gone very quiet, which frightened me more than if she'd shouted. "The Alpha King is looking for a bride, his 4th bride. Reeves has connections in the Blood Moon territory. He says if we can deliver a suitable girl, one who meets the Alpha's requirements, the debt disappears. All of it. Gone." "You want to sell my daughter to the beast?" The title emerged sharp as broken glass. Everyone knew about Adrian Blackthorne, the Alpha King who'd ascended to power 5 years ago in a coup so violent that rivers literally ran red. They said he'd killed his own father to claim the throne. They said his wolf was so large, it blotted out the moon. They said his 3 previous brides had all died under mysterious circumstances. Their bodies returned to their families without explanation. "It's not selling," Marcus protested weakly. "It's an arranged marriage. Happens all the time among the packs. To a monster who murders women? You're talking about sending Emilia to her death." I waited for Marcus to deny it, to express some shred of remorse or hesitation. Instead, he said, "Then we all die when Reeves's men come to collect. Is that what you want, Lydia? You think they'll be gentle about it? You think they'll let you live once they realize we have nothing?" The argument continued, but I'd heard enough. I retreated to my small room at the end of the hall, my heart hammering so violently I thought it might crack my ribs. My room held little, just a narrow bed with a faded quilt my grandmother had sewn, a wooden dresser with a cracked mirror, and that jar of coins hidden beneath the loose floorboard. 237 silver marks, saved over 3 years of early mornings and late nights, of smiling at rude customers and pretending not to notice when hands lingered too long on my waist. I pulled up the board and retrieved the jar, counting coins I'd counted 1,000 times before. Not nearly enough to run, not nearly enough to disappear. I had no wolf, no pack ties, no allies who might shelter me from what was coming. My father had been human, which made me an oddity among the packs, weak and slow compared to full-blooded shifters. My mother said he'd been kind, that he'd loved her desperately until a fever took him when I was 3. She'd married Marcus 2 years later, desperate for security and someone to provide for a half-human child. She'd traded one kind of survival for another, and I'd paid the price of that choice every day since. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed watching moonlight creep across my ceiling, listening to my mother and Marcus argue in vicious whispers that carried through the thin walls. By dawn, they'd reached their decision. When Lydia appeared in my doorway as pale light filtered through my window, I already knew what she would say. "Emilia," she wouldn't meet my eyes, "we need to talk about your future. You're going to give me to him." I kept my voice steady, though everything inside me was screaming. "To the Alpha King, to settle the debt." My mother flinched like I'd struck her. "It's not like that. This is an opportunity. You'll be a queen. You'll have everything you could ever want." "Except my life?" I sat up, pulling my knees to my chest. "Mother, his brides die. All of them. Everyone knows it. Those are rumors. Gossip from packs who envy Blood Moon's power." But her eyes slid away as she spoke, and I knew she didn't believe her own words. "Marcus has already sent word to Reeves. Representatives from Blood Moon territory will arrive tomorrow to assess your suitability. If you're chosen, the wedding will take place within the week. And if I refuse?" Now she did meet my gaze, and what I saw there was worse than anger. It was resignation, acceptance, the look of a woman who'd made peace with sacrificing her daughter to save herself. "Then Reeves's men come, and none of us survive what happens next. At least this way you have a chance. Maybe you'll be different. Maybe you'll be the one he doesn't kill." She left me then, closing the door softly behind her as if gentle movements might somehow soften the blow of what she'd just delivered. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. Instead, I rose and dressed in my plainest clothes, then walked to the diner for my shift. If these were my last days of freedom, I would spend them in familiar routines, pretending the world wasn't ending around me. The representatives arrived precisely when promised. I was scrubbing tables when I heard the motorcycles, their engines growling like wolves announcing their presence. 3 of them pulled up outside the diner, and the handful of morning customers suddenly found urgent reasons to leave. I stood frozen with my rag dripping soapy water onto the floor as they entered. The first was a woman, tall and elegant, with silver hair bound in an intricate braid. Her eyes, pale blue and cold as winter ice, swept the diner before landing on me. The 2 men flanking her were clearly guards, massive shifters with the predatory stillness of trained warriors. All 3 wore black leather marked with the Blood Moon insignia, a crimson moon dripping what looked like blood. "Emilia Rosewood?" The woman's voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to obedience. I nodded, not trusting my voice. "I am Vivian Ashcroft, advisor to Alpha King Adrian Blackthorne. I've been sent to determine your suitability as a potential bride for His Majesty." She looked me up and down with clinical detachment, as if evaluating livestock. "You're smaller than I expected, shorter, and the human blood is obvious." Heat flooded my cheeks, but I lifted my chin. If I was going to die, I'd do it with whatever dignity I could muster. I didn't ask for this. I didn't volunteer to be inspected like a prize mare. Something flickered in Vivian's expression, there and gone too quickly to identify. "No, I don't imagine you did. Few women volunteer to marry the beast." She gestured toward a booth. "Sit. We need to discuss what this arrangement entails." I obeyed because what choice did I have? The guards positioned themselves near the door while Vivian slid into the seat across from me. She produced a leather folder from her bag and spread several documents across the table. "Your stepfather's debt is substantial," she began. "Reeves operates one of the most ruthless lending rings in 3 territories. He's killed families for less than Marcus owes." By accepting this arrangement, the entire debt will be forgiven. Your mother and stepfather will be free to continue their lives without threat. How generous, I said bitterly, and all I have to do is die for them. The Alpha King's previous marriages ended unfortunately, but there's no evidence he killed those women himself. Vivian's tone suggested she didn't quite believe her own words. You'll have wealth beyond imagining, status, power. The Blood Moon Pack is the largest and most influential in the region. For however long I survive. Vivian's lips compressed into a thin line. I won't lie to you, girl. Adrian Blackthorne is not a kind man. He's violent, unpredictable, and carries more darkness than any wolf I've encountered in 40 years of pack politics. His wolf is problematic, but he needs an heir, and he needs a bride who can provide one. If you're clever and cautious, you might live long enough to give him what he wants. And then what? He discards me like the others. The contracts his previous brides signed included provisions for their families in the event of their deaths. Generous provisions. Your mother would be financially secure for life. Vivian pushed a document toward me. This is the marriage contract. It's been modified to include a clause guaranteeing your family's welfare regardless of the marriage's outcome. I stared at the elegant script, understanding perhaps half the legal terminology. You're saying even if he kills me, my mother benefits? I'm saying this arrangement ensures your sacrifice, if it comes to that, won't be meaningless. Vivian's voice softened slightly. I've served the Blackthorne line for 2 decades. I won't pretend Adrian is a good man, but there are worse fates than becoming his bride. Some women in your position would have no protection at all. I wanted to laugh at the absurdity. Protection. As if a legal document would shield me from a monster's claws. But I looked at Vivian's face and saw something unexpected. A flicker of genuine concern beneath her professional mask. This woman had seen Adrian Blackthorne's previous brides. She knew exactly what waited for me in Blood Moon territory. Yet she was here, trying in her own cold way to offer what comfort she could. When would the wedding take place? I asked. 5 days from now. You'll be brought to Thornwood Manor tomorrow evening. The ceremony will be private, attended only by the pack's inner circle. Afterward, you and the Alpha King will consummate the marriage. If you survive the wedding night intact, you'll be formally recognized as Luna Queen the following morning. If I survive, the words hung in the air between us like a curse. I thought about running, about grabbing my jar of coins and disappearing into human cities where pack laws didn't reach. But Reeves's men would hunt my mother and Marcus. They'd make examples of them, and everyone would know Emilia Rosewood had been too cowardly to honor an agreement made in her name. I need to know one thing, I said slowly. The previous brides, how did they die? Vivian's expression became unreadable. The first, Catherine, lasted 3 months. They said she threw herself from the manor's highest tower. The second, Isolde, made it 6 weeks. She was found in the forest with her throat torn out, officially ruled an animal attack. The third, Morgana, died on her wedding night. Heart failure, according to the physicians. She was 22 years old and healthy. My blood turned to ice. And you want me to marry this man? I want you to survive him, Vivian said quietly. Adrian Blackthorne is broken in ways I don't fully understand. His wolf is different. Wrong somehow. It demands things of him, drives him to violence he can't always control. But I've seen moments when the man surfaces beneath the beast. Brief moments when he seems almost human. If you can reach that part of him, if you can find what's left of the person he was before the darkness consumed him, you might have a chance. She stood, gathering her documents. We'll return for you tomorrow at sunset. Bring nothing but what you can carry in a single bag. Once you enter Blood Moon territory, your old life ends. Everything you were, everything you owned, belongs to your past. Your future, however long or short it may be, belongs to Adrian Blackthorne. They left me there in the empty diner with my thoughts spiraling like leaves in a storm. I finished my shift mechanically, wiping down tables and refilling salt shakers while my mind raced through impossible scenarios. Every escape plan crumbled under scrutiny. Every hope of rescue dissolved like morning fog. By the time I locked the diner's doors and began the walk home, I'd accepted my fate with the numb resignation of a condemned prisoner. My mother was waiting when I arrived. She'd been crying, her eyes red and swollen, but she composed herself when she saw me. "Emilia, sweetheart, we need to talk about what you'll wear, about how you should conduct yourself with the Alpha King. There are things you need to know about wedding nights and what's expected. Don't." The word came out sharper than I intended. Don't pretend this is a normal marriage. Don't pretend you're preparing your daughter for a happy future. You sold me, Mother. You and Marcus decided my life was worth less than his gambling debts. I'll go because I have no choice, but don't ask me to smile about it. Her face crumpled. "Emmy, please. You have to understand. We had no other options. If there was any other way, any way at all. There's always another way. You just chose the one that saved yourselves." I pushed past her, climbing the stairs to my room for what might be the last time. Behind me, I heard her sobbing, but I couldn't bring myself to care. Whatever maternal bond we'd shared had frayed beyond repair the moment she agreed to this arrangement. I spent that night sorting through my meager possessions, trying to decide what fragments of my identity I could carry into this new horror. My grandmother's quilt, too bulky. The book of poetry my father supposedly loved, maybe. A photograph of my mother and me from before Marcus, when she still smiled like she meant it. I left that on my dresser, let her remember what she'd destroyed. The second day passed in a haze. I said goodbye to the few friends I'd made at the diner, though I couldn't tell them where I was going or why. Most assumed I'd found work in a larger city. Let them think that. Let them remember me as a girl who chased better opportunities, not as a sacrifice sent to soothe a monster. Sunset came too quickly. I stood in my room wearing the simple blue dress my mother had insisted was appropriate, my small bag packed with the few items I couldn't bear to abandon. Through my window, I watched the sky bleed orange and red, colors like a warning. The sound of motorcycles announced their arrival precisely as the sun touched the horizon. Vivienne waited by the lead bike, her silver hair gleaming in the dying light. "It's time," she said simply when I emerged from the house. My mother tried to embrace me, but I stepped away, couldn't bear her touch. Marcus didn't even have the courage to face me, hiding somewhere inside the house like the coward he was. "I hope it was worth it," I told my mother. "I hope you sleep well knowing what you've done." Then I climbed onto the back of Vivienne's motorcycle, and we rode away from the only home I'd ever known. The journey to Blood Moon territory took 3 hours, winding through forests that grew progressively darker and more oppressive. The trees here seemed twisted, their branches reaching like grasping hands. Even the moonlight felt different, colder and somehow threatening. Thornwood Manor materialized from the shadows like something from a nightmare. It was massive, a sprawling estate of dark stone and towering spires that seemed designed to intimidate. Gargoyles crouched on the corners of the roof, their stone eyes tracking our approach. Windows glowed with warm light, but the effect was anything but welcoming, more like eyes watching from the darkness. Guards met us at the entrance, more of those massive shifters who moved with predatory grace. They escorted me inside without speaking, through corridors lined with portraits of stern-faced wolves and tapestries depicting brutal battles. Everything here spoke of violence, of power maintained through fear and blood. They brought me to a suite of rooms larger than my entire house, back in Silverbrook. A 4-poster bed dominated the space, draped in deep burgundy fabric that looked like congealed blood in the lamplight. A wardrobe stood open, revealing gowns more elaborate than anything I'd ever imagined wearing. A vanity held cosmetics and perfumes whose bottles probably cost more than I'd earned in years. "These are your quarters," Vivienne informed me. "You'll spend tonight here. Tomorrow the preparations begin." The wedding ceremony takes place at midnight the day after tomorrow under the full moon. It's traditional for Blood Moon royalty to wed beneath the mother's full light. "Will I meet him before the ceremony?" I asked, surprised at how steady my voice sounded. "The Alpha King?" "No, Adrian doesn't participate in the preparations. You'll see him for the first time when you walk down the aisle." Vivienne paused at the door. "Try to rest. The next few days will be difficult, and you'll need your strength." She left me alone in that opulent prison. I explored the rooms mechanically, opening drawers and examining the luxurious furnishings with detached curiosity. This would be my cage until the wedding, and possibly my tomb thereafter. I should appreciate the gilded bars while I still drew breath. A knock at my door startled me from dark thoughts. A young woman entered carrying a tray laden with food, more food than I could eat in days. She couldn't have been older than 16, with mousy brown hair and eyes that wouldn't meet mine. "I'm Holly," she said softly, setting the tray on a small table. "I've been assigned as your personal attendant. If you need anything at all, just ask. Do you know what happened to the others?" The question emerged before I could stop it. "The previous brides?" Holly's hands trembled as she arranged the plates. "I wasn't here for the first two, but I was assigned to Lady Morgana. She was kind to me, treated me like a person instead of a servant." "What happened to her?" "I don't know." Holly's voice dropped to barely a whisper. She seemed nervous before the wedding, but not terrified. She thought maybe she could make the marriage work. That maybe the Alpha King just needed someone patient and understanding. On the wedding night, I helped her dress in her nightgown, and then I left them alone, like protocol demands. The next morning when I came to wake her, she was still in bed, but something was wrong. Her eyes were open but empty. The physician said her heart just stopped. "And you believe that?" Holly finally looked at me, and what I saw in her eyes was raw fear. I believe something in that room killed her. Whether it was the Alpha King or something else, I don't know. But whatever it was, I hope for your sake you're stronger than she was. She fled after that, leaving me alone with food I had no appetite for and thoughts that chased sleep far into the night. I finally dozed near dawn, only to be woken hours later by a team of women who descended on me with the efficiency of an invading army. The next 2 days blurred into an endless parade of fittings and preparations. They waxed and plucked and scrubbed until my skin felt raw. They taught me how to walk in heels that seemed designed to break ankles, how to hold my head at the proper angle to display submission to an alpha while maintaining enough dignity to represent the pack. They drilled me on titles and protocols, on who to acknowledge and who to ignore, on the 1,000 unspoken rules that govern pack hierarchy. Through it all, I remained numb, going through motions like a puppet whose strings were controlled by forces beyond my understanding. I barely tasted the rich foods they fed me. I didn't look at my reflection in the mirrors they constantly positioned me before. That girl in the glass with hollow eyes and pale skin wasn't me. She was some other creature being prepared for sacrifice. The wedding dress arrived the morning of the ceremony. It was beautiful in a terrible way. White silk that seemed to glow against my skin, embroidered with silver thread in patterns that suggested thorns and chains. The neckline dipped low, the waist cinched tight, the skirt flowed like water. I looked like a virgin sacrifice from some ancient ritual, which I supposed was exactly the point. As sunset approached, a strange calm settled over me. Whatever was coming, I would face it. I'd survived my stepfather's casual cruelty and my mother's cold indifference. I'd survived poverty and prejudice and the constant reminder that my human blood made me less than others. Perhaps I'd survive this too, or perhaps I'd die, but either way the waiting would finally end. They led me to a small chapel on the manor grounds as the full moon rose huge and silver on the horizon. The building was ancient, built from the same dark stone as the manor, with stained glass windows depicting wolves and moons and scenes of carnage, barely disguised as heroic battles. Inside, candles provided the only light, casting dancing shadows across wooden pews filled with silent pack members. I stood at the entrance with no one to give me away, no family to support me in this final walk. Vivienne appeared at my side, her face grave. "Remember what I told you," she murmured. "Reach for the man beneath the beast. It's your only chance." Then music swelled. Some haunting melody played on strings that sounded like wolves crying. The crowd rose as one, their eyes following me as I began the long walk down the aisle. I kept my gaze forward, refusing to look at their faces, refusing to see pity or satisfaction or whatever emotion they felt watching another lamb approach slaughter. And there, standing before the altar beneath a massive stained glass window depicting a wolf devouring the moon, was Adrian Blackthorne. He was massive, taller than any man I'd seen, with shoulders broad enough to block the altar behind him. Dark hair fell to his shoulders, framing a face that might have been handsome, if not for the violence written in every line. Scars marked his jaw and neck, pale lines against tan skin. His eyes glowed amber even in human form, burning with an intensity that made my steps falter. He wore black, all black, from his tailored jacket to his boots, like a shadow given human shape. Power radiated from him in waves I could feel even at this distance. This was an alpha in the truest sense, a predator so far above me in the hierarchy that we might as well be different species. I reached the altar and he held out his hand. I had no choice but to take it. His palm was warm, his grip gentle despite the strength I could feel coiled beneath his skin. Up close, he was even more intimidating, his presence overwhelming, suffocating. I forced myself to meet those burning amber eyes. For just a moment, I saw something flicker in their depths. Surprise, maybe, or recognition. Then his expression hardened back to cold indifference. The ceremony was brief, the words ancient and ritualistic. I repeated vows I didn't believe, promising loyalty and obedience to a man I feared. He spoke his own promises in a voice like gravel, agreeing to protect and provide for me. Lies, all of it lies. But the pack witnessed, and the bond formed regardless of our true feelings. When the officiant pronounced us married, Adrian pulled me close and kissed me. It wasn't gentle, it was claiming, possessive, a display of dominance for the watching pack. His lips were surprisingly soft, but his hand at the back of my neck was iron. When he released me, I was breathing hard, my heart racing with fear and something I didn't want to examine too closely. The reception was torture. I sat beside Adrian at the head table while pack members approached to offer congratulations that felt more like condolences. He barely spoke to me, acknowledging my presence only when protocol demanded. I drank wine to steady my nerves, then drank more when that wasn't enough. By the time the celebration ended, I was floating in a haze of alcohol and dread. Finally, inevitably, Adrian stood. The crowd fell silent. "My bride and I will retire," he announced. "We are not to be disturbed." He offered me his arm, and I took it because refusing would have been unthinkable. We walked from the chapel back to the manor, our footsteps echoing in the sudden quiet. Pack members watched from windows and doorways, their eyes gleaming in the darkness, witnesses to my final walk toward whatever fate awaited. Adrian led me to a wing of the manor I hadn't seen before, to a massive suite of rooms that were clearly his personal domain. The main chamber was dominated by an enormous bed draped in dark furs. A fireplace crackled with flames that cast shifting shadows across walls lined with weapons. Everything here spoke of violence barely restrained. He released my arm and moved to a small bar in the corner, pouring himself a glass of amber liquid. "You should remove the dress," he said, without looking at me. "It's valuable. Shame to ruin it." My hands shook as I reached for the buttons at my back. I couldn't reach them all, struggling with the top ones until I heard him sigh. He crossed the room in 3 strides and spun me around, his fingers working the buttons with practiced efficiency. The dress loosened and fell away, pulling at my feet and leaving me in just the thin silk shift they'd put me in underneath. I stood there trembling, waiting for violence or passion or whatever form my death would take. Instead, Adrian circled me slowly like a predator studying prey. "You're very small," he said, almost to himself. "Fragile. Human blood always produces delicate creatures." "I'm stronger than I look," I whispered, though it was probably a lie. "We'll see." He reached out and tilted my chin up, forcing me to meet his eyes. This close, I could see flecks of gold in the amber, could smell something wild and dangerous radiating from his skin. "I can hear your heart racing. Smell your fear. You think I'm going to kill you." It wasn't a question, so I didn't answer. We both knew the truth. "My previous wives," he said slowly, "died because they weren't strong enough to handle what I am, what my wolf demands. Catherine thought she could change me with kindness. Isolde tried to run. Morgana believed love would save her. They were all wrong." His hand moved from my chin to my throat, not squeezing, just resting there, a reminder of how easily he could crush the life from me. "I don't want a wife who tries to fix me or flee from me or love me. I want someone who can survive me. Can you do that, Emilia?" "I don't know," I admitted, "but I'll try." Something shifted in his expression, The amber of his eyes blazed brighter, and suddenly it wasn't just Adrian standing before me. There was something else present, something massive and wild pressing against the thin veneer of his humanity. His wolf, I realized. The beast everyone feared was right there, just beneath his skin, watching me through Adrian's eyes. "My wolf wants you," Adrian growled, his voice dropping to something inhuman. "It's howling for you, has been since you walked into the chapel. It's never done that before, never wanted any of the others. It only wanted them dead." My mind raced trying to understand. Pack bonds were sacred, but mate bonds were something else entirely. Rare connections that form between wolves and their destined partners. But I had no wolf. I was barely pack adjacent. How could his wolf possibly want me? "I don't understand," I breathed. "Neither do I." His grip on my throat tightened slightly, not painful but insistent. "But I can feel it, feel the bond trying to form. My wolf recognizes something in you, claims you as its mate. The question is what happens now. The bond demands I claim you fully, mark you, make you mine in every way. But my wolf, it's not entirely stable. It might kill you in the process of trying to possess you." Terror spiked through me, but beneath it was something else, a strange awareness I'd never felt before. I could sense Adrian's wolf now that I was looking for it, could feel its presence like static electricity raising the hair on my arms. It was huge and ancient and barely contained, but it wasn't entirely monstrous. There was pain there, confusion, a desperate loneliness that called to something deep in my own soul. "Your other wives," I said carefully. "Did your wolf want them?" "No. It wanted them gone. Wanted to eliminate threats to our territory, to our sanity. I couldn't control it. I tried, but the beast won every time." His eyes had gone entirely amber now, his humanity slipping. "With you, it's different. With you, my wolf wants to protect, possess, claim. But the violence is still there, just redirected." "Then let it claim me." The words escaped before I could think them through. "If I'm going to die anyway, let it be because your wolf tried to make me its mate, not because it decided I was a threat. At least that way I'll know I meant something, even if only for a moment." Adrian stared at me like I'd lost my mind. Maybe I had, but I was so tired of being afraid, so tired of waiting for death to find me. If this bond was real, if his wolf truly recognized me as a mate, then maybe I had the slimmest chance of survival. And if I didn't, at least I'd die trying to live instead of cowering in fear. "You have no idea what you're asking," Adrian said, but his hand had moved from my throat to cut my face almost gently. "The claiming is intense, painful. My wolf will want to mark you, bite you, bind you to us in ways that can't be undone. And if the bond doesn't fully form, if your human nature can't handle the connection, your mind could break. You could end up like the others, dead before dawn. Then we'll know soon enough." I pressed my hand over his where it rested against my cheek. His skin was burning hot, fever bright. "I'd rather die trying to be your mate than die for no reason at all." Something in him broke then. The careful control he'd been maintaining shattered, and suddenly he was kissing me again. But this time, there was desperation beneath the dominance. His hands tangled in my hair, pulling me closer as if he could somehow merge us through sheer force of will. I kissed him back with equal fervor, tasting whiskey and wildness on his tongue. He lifted me easily, carrying me to the massive bed and laying me down on furs that were soft as clouds. His hands roamed my body over the thin silk, mapping my curves with a gentleness that contradicted everything I'd heard about him. When he pulled away to strip off his own clothes, I got my first full view of him. His body was a roadmap of violence, scarred and marked from countless battles. But he was also beautiful in a raw, primal way, all lean muscle and dangerous grace. And his eyes, those amber eyes fixed on me with an intensity that stole my breath, held something I'd never expected to see. Wonder. "I can feel it forming," he whispered, climbing onto the bed beside me. "The mate bond. It's like finding a missing piece of my soul I didn't know was gone." He pulled the shift over my head, and I lay bare before him, vulnerable and exposed. His hands trembled slightly as they traced patterns on my skin, following invisible lines only he could see. When his lips followed the same paths, I gasped, overwhelmed by sensations I'd never experienced. I need to mark you, Adrian growled against my throat. My wolf demands it, but I'll try. I'll try to be gentle. If it becomes too much, if you need me to stop, tell me. I'll fight it as long as I can. I nodded, not trusting my voice. His teeth scraped against the junction of my neck and shoulder, not breaking skin yet, just testing. Then he bit down and pain exploded through me, white hot and all-consuming. I screamed, body arching beneath him as something foreign flooded my system. His wolf, I could feel it. Feel its consciousness pressing against mine, trying to forge a connection that should have been impossible. The pain intensified, and for a moment I thought I would die. Thought my human nature would simply shatter under the weight of bonding with such a powerful alpha. But then something in me rose to meet the challenge. Some hidden well of strength I'd never known existed. I grabbed Adrian's shoulders and held on as the bond clicked into place with an almost audible snap. Suddenly, I could feel everything. Adrian's emotions crashed over me in waves. Decades of pain and rage and crushing loneliness that had driven him to the edge of madness. I felt his wolf's confusion, the way it had been twisted by trauma into something barely recognizable as natural. And beneath all that darkness, I felt something else, a desperate hunger for connection. For someone who could see past the monster to the broken man underneath. The pain receded slowly, replaced by a warmth that spread through my veins like liquid sunlight. Adrian's teeth released my shoulder and he licked the wound, his saliva carrying properties that would help it heal into a permanent mark. His mark. The physical proof that I belonged to him now in ways that transcended simple marriage. Emilia. My name on his lips sounded like a prayer and a curse combined. I can feel you. Feel your thoughts, your emotions. The bond, it actually worked. You're my mate, my true mate. I could feel him too. Our consciousness connected in ways I struggled to comprehend. The intimacy of it was overwhelming, more invasive than any physical touch. He could sense my fear and my determination, my anger at the situation that brought me here, and my strange, growing acceptance of this bond we now shared. I'm still scared, I whispered. Of you, of this, of what happens next. Good. Fear keeps you alert, keeps you alive. He kissed the mark he'd left on my shoulder, gentle now. But you don't have to face it alone anymore. The bond, it works both ways. I feel your strength, small as you are. There's steel in you, Emilia. My wolf chose well. He made love to me then, and it was nothing like I'd imagined from whispered conversations with other girls, or the clinical explanations my mother had attempted. It was intense and overwhelming, pleasure mixed with pain as our bodies learned each other. Through the bond I could feel his sensations alongside my own, doubling everything until I couldn't tell where I ended and he began. When it was over, we lay tangled together in the furs, my head on his scarred chest, his arms wrapped around me like I was something precious he feared might disappear. Through the bond I felt his wonder, his disbelief that this had actually worked, that he'd finally found someone who could survive the claiming. Tell me about them, I said quietly. Your previous wives. I need to understand what happened. Adrian was silent for so long, I thought he wouldn't answer. Then he sighed, his chest rising and falling beneath my cheek. Catherine was chosen by my advisors, a political match meant to strengthen alliances. She was kind, gentle, everything an alpha's mate should be. But my wolf saw her as weak, a liability. It kept pushing me to eliminate the threat. I fought it for 3 months, fought so hard I barely slept. Then one night I lost control while I slept. I woke to find her dead, thrown from the tower. I don't remember doing it, but I know I must have. His pain through the bond was agonizing. Self-hatred so deep it felt like drowning. I pressed closer, offering what comfort I could. Isolde was stronger, he continued. A warrior from a northern pack. I thought maybe strength would be enough, that my wolf would respect her prowess. But it saw her as a challenger instead, a threat to dominance. She tried to run when she realized what I was, what my wolf would eventually do. She made it 3 miles into the forest before it caught her. I came back to myself standing over her body with blood on my hands and no memory of the hunt. And Morgana, I prompted gently. Morgana was different. She had some training in pack magic, old arts most wolves have forgotten. She thought she could help me, that she could heal whatever was broken in my wolf. On our wedding night, she tried a binding ritual, tried to separate me from my wolf enough that I could control it. But the wolf fought back. The conflict, it was like being torn in two. When the dust settled, she was dead, and I was more fractured than before. He pulled back enough to look at me, his amber eyes haunted. I didn't want any of them to die. I fought as hard as I could to protect them. But my wolf was stronger, always stronger, until you. With you, it finally wants the same thing I do. It wants to protect you, keep you, treasure you. The violence is still there, but it's directed outward now. Against anything that might threaten you. Why, I asked. Why is the bond different with me? I'm weaker than all of them, more vulnerable. I don't have a wolf of my own to match yours. I don't know. He traced patterns on my bare shoulder, careful to avoid the fresh mark. Maybe that's exactly why. You can't challenge it, can't threaten its dominance. Or maybe it's something in your bloodline, some compatibility I don't understand. Or maybe you're just the one I was always meant to find and the others were mistakes. Tragedies that happened because I was trying to force something that wasn't meant to be. We lay in silence after that, both processing the enormity of what had happened. I'd survived my wedding night. The bond had formed. I was truly Adrian Blackthorne's mate now, connected to him in ways that would last until death separated us. The thought should have terrified me. Instead, I felt a strange sense of rightness, as if some part of me had been waiting my entire life for this connection. What happens now? I finally asked. Now you rest. Tomorrow we announce the successful bonding to the pack. You'll be formally recognized as Luna Queen, with all the power and responsibility that entails. And then we figure out how to actually be married to each other. You mean you don't have it all planned out? I couldn't help the slight sarcasm in my tone. He huffed something that might have been a laugh. Emilia, I've spent the last 5 years assuming I'd never successfully bond with anyone, that I was destined to kill every woman my advisors forced me to marry until eventually someone killed me for it. I have no idea how to be a husband to someone who actually survived. The vulnerability in his voice, both spoken and felt through the bond, made my heart ache. This fearsome Alpha King, this monster everyone whispered about, was just a man who'd been trapped in his own personal hell for years. A man who'd been forced to kill women he'd tried to protect, who'd lived with the guilt and self-hatred until it had nearly destroyed him. I guess we'll figure it out together, I said, surprising myself with how much I meant it. Neither of us asked for this, but we're bound now. Might as well make the best of it. Make the best of it, Adrian repeated, and this time there was definitely humor in his voice. Such romantic sentiments from my new bride. You want romantic. You should have married someone who came here willingly. But I was smiling as I said it, the first genuine smile I'd managed in days. He kissed me again, softer this time, exploratory rather than claiming. Through the bond I felt his gratitude, his relief, his cautious hope that maybe this could actually work. And beneath all that I felt his wolf, no longer howling with rage but purring with contentment, finally at peace. We slept eventually, wrapped around each other like we might drift apart if we let go. I woke several times during the night to find Adrian watching me with those intense amber eyes, as if he couldn't quite believe I was real. Each time I'd touch his face or his chest, grounding him, reminding both of us that this was real. The bond hummed between us, a constant awareness of each other's presence that should have been intrusive but somehow felt comforting instead. Morning came with Holly knocking timidly at the door. Adrian growled at the interruption but let her in, pulling on pants while I hastily wrapped myself in furs. Holly's eyes went wide when she saw the mark on my shoulder, then wider still when she realized I was alive and apparently unharmed. Luna Queen, she breathed, dropping into a formal bow. Everyone is waiting to hear, to know if I survived, I finished for her. The bond formed. I'm alive. Tears filled Holly's eyes. Thank the mother, we were all so worried, especially after. She stopped herself, clearly thinking better of mentioning past tragedies. After the others died, I said flatly. It's okay, Holly. We all know what happened. But whatever curse or problem plagued those bonds doesn't apply to this one. Adrian's wolf accepted me as its mate. We're truly bonded now. Holly nodded rapidly, still looking slightly stunned. The pack will be so relieved. We've all been worried about His Majesty, about what would happen if another bond failed. There were whispers that maybe the Alpha King was cursed, that maybe he'd have to step down if he couldn't produce an heir. Adrian's expression darkened. Who was whispering? No one specific, just general concern. Holly backtracked quickly, fear flickering across her face. Everyone wants what's best for the pack, and that means having stable leadership with a proper Luna and eventually heirs. Well, now they have their proper Luna, Adrian said, moving to stand behind me, his hands on my shoulders in a gesture that was both possessive and protective. And anyone who questions her fitness for the role or suggests she might meet the same fate as the others will answer to me personally. The threat in his voice was unmistakable. Holly bobbed another bow and fled, no doubt to spread word that the new Luna Queen had survived her wedding night. Within hours, the entire pack would know. Adrian ordered breakfast brought to our rooms, unwilling to let me leave his sight for even the time it would take to dress and go to a dining hall. We ate together on the balcony overlooking the grounds, watching pack members go about their morning routines. I could feel their curious glances, the way eyes tracked toward our balcony, then skittered away when they thought they might be noticed. They're afraid of you, I observed. They should be. Fear keeps order. Fear keeps them from challenging my authority or causing problems. But through the bond, I felt his dissatisfaction with that answer, his awareness that ruling through fear alone was unsustainable. Fear also breeds resentment. Eventually, someone will be more angry than afraid, and then you'll have a real problem. He looked at me with surprise. You've been my mate for less than a day, and you're already criticizing my leadership. I'm your mate, not your subject. The bond goes both ways, remember? I can feel that you're not entirely happy with how things are, that you know the pack's loyalty is shallow, based on terror rather than genuine respect. I met his eyes steadily. If I'm going to be Luna Queen, if I'm going to help you rule, then I'm going to be honest with you, even when that honesty is uncomfortable. Something shifted in his expression, a wall crumbling just slightly. Catherine never challenged me. Isolde only challenged with violence. Morgana tried to fix me instead of confronting me. You're different. I'm too stubborn to be meek, too practical to fight you physically, and I'm smart enough to know you don't need fixing, you need supporting. I reached across the table and took his hand. I didn't ask to be here, Adrian, but I am here, and I'm bound to you now. We can either make this work or we can be miserable together. I'd prefer the former. So would I. He squeezed my hand gently, but I don't know how to be what you need, how to be a husband instead of just an alpha. How to share my life with someone who won't just obey, but will actually participate. Then we learned together. I smiled at him, feeling through the bond how much my words affected him. Starting with you telling me what I can expect today, what does formally recognizing me as Luna Queen entail? The ceremony turned out to be less elaborate than the wedding, but no less significant. At noon, the entire pack gathered in the Great Hall, hundreds of wolves filling the space to capacity. Adrian and I entered together, me wearing a gown of deep crimson that Vivian had selected, him in formal black with the pack insignia prominent on his chest. Vivian herself conducted the ceremony, her voice ringing through the hall as she recited ancient words about bonds and loyalty and the duties of a Luna Queen. When prompted, I stepped forward and Adrian placed a silver circlet on my head, marking me officially as his mate and co-ruler of Blood Moon Pack. Do you accept this woman as your mate, your Luna, your equal in all matters of pack governance? Vivian asked Adrian. I do, Adrian said clearly. I accept Emilia Rosewood, now Emilia Blackthorne, as my true mate, recognized by my wolf and bound by blood and ceremony. Do you accept this man as your mate, your alpha, your partner in leading this pack? Vivian turned to me. I looked at Adrian, feeling through our bond his anxiety about my answer, his fear that despite everything I might still reject him publicly. I squeezed his hand and said firmly, I do. I accept Adrian Blackthorne as my mate, my alpha, and I pledge to serve Blood Moon Pack as Luna Queen to the best of my ability. The pack erupted in howls, both from those in wolf form and those in human form. The sound was deafening, primal, a recognition of the bond that now tied me to every wolf in this territory. I was pack now, truly pack, protected by their laws and responsible for their welfare. After the ceremony came a reception where pack members could approach and offer their respects. Most were formal, keeping their distance, offering stiff congratulations that barely masked their curiosity about how I'd managed to survive where others had failed. But a few were genuinely warm, particularly some of the older wolves, who seemed relieved that Adrian had finally found a stable bond. One elderly woman named Marissa pulled me aside during a break in the formalities. "You've given us hope, child," she said softly. Adrian was a good boy before everything. His father's death broke something in him, and watching his attempts at bonding fail broke him further. But I see something in his eyes now that I haven't seen in years. Peace. You've given him peace. I'm not sure I've done anything special, I admitted. The bond just worked. I don't understand why, but it did. Sometimes the mother's gifts don't require understanding, just acceptance. Marissa patted my hand. Be patient with him, Luna Queen. He's been alone in his own head for so long, he's forgotten how to let anyone in. The bond may be formed, but trust, real trust, takes time. Her words stayed with me through the long afternoon of ceremonies and formalities. By evening, I was exhausted, overwhelmed by the constant attention and the weight of my new responsibilities. Adrian seemed to sense my fatigue through the bond because he made excuses to leave early, guiding me back to our rooms with a protective hand at the small of my back. "You did well today," he said, once we were alone. "Better than I expected for someone who's never been part of pack hierarchy." I was terrified the entire time, I confessed, sinking onto a sofa. I kept waiting to make some horrible mistake that would embarrass you or insult someone important. You made no mistakes. If anything, you were too perfect, too composed. Some of the older wolves were commenting that you seemed very comfortable with power for someone so new to it. He poured us both wine and settled beside me. "Where did you learn to handle authority so smoothly?" I laughed bitterly. "From survival. When you grow up with a stepfather like Marcus, you learn to read people quickly, to say what they need to hear to avoid their anger. I spent years navigating his moods, predicting his violence, placating him enough to protect myself and my mother. That skill translates surprisingly well to pack politics." Through the bond, Adrian felt my pain, the old wounds I carried from my childhood. His arm came around me, pulling me against his side. "He hurt you. It wasn't a question." "Not physically, usually." Marcus was smart enough to know hitting his stepdaughter would cause problems with my mother's pack connections, weak as they were. But he hurt me in other ways. Stole my wages, destroyed things I loved. Made sure I knew I was a burden, an obligation he'd been forced to accept when he married my mother. I took a long drink of wine. Selling me to pay his debts was just his final proof that I'd never mattered to him at all. Adrian's arms tightened around me. Through the bond, I felt his rage, his desire to hunt down Marcus and make him suffer for every pain he'd caused me. "Give me permission, and I'll have him brought here. I'll make him answer for what he did." The offer was tempting, deeply tempting, but I shook my head. "No, Marcus is pathetic, not worth your time or energy. The best revenge is living well. And I'm a queen now while he's still a nobody drowning in debt. Let him live with his choices." "You're more merciful than I'd be." Adrian kissed the top of my head. "But if you change your mind, just say the word." We spent the evening quietly, both of us drained from the day's events. Adrian showed me around our private quarters, explaining which rooms were for what purposes, where I could find things I might need. It was surreal, this domestic moment with a man I'd feared just days ago. But the bond made it feel natural, right? As if we'd been partners for years, rather than hours. That night we made love again, slower this time, learning each other's bodies with more patience. The bond amplified everything. Let me feel his pleasure alongside my own, until I couldn't tell the difference. When I climaxed, it was with his name on my lips, and his satisfaction thundering through my veins, along with my own. Afterward, lying tangled together in the darkness, Adrian said something that surprised me. "I'm glad it was you. Glad the bond formed with you instead of someone else. You're exactly what I needed, even though I didn't know it." "What did you need?" I asked softly. Someone strong enough to survive me, but soft enough to see past the monster. Someone who would challenge me instead of just obeying. Someone who could make me want to be better instead of just accepting that I'm broken. He traced idle patterns on my back. I thought I was too damaged for this, for any kind of real connection. You proved me wrong. We proved each other wrong, I corrected. I thought I was too weak to survive as anyone's mate, too human to fit into a pack hierarchy. But here I am, alive and bonded to the most powerful alpha in the territory. Turns out we're both stronger than we believed. Together we're stronger, Adrian amended. The bond, it's not just romantic or sexual. It's making me more stable. I can feel my wolf settling in ways it hasn't in years. You balance something in me, Emilia. Ground me. I felt the truth of his words through the bond. His wolf, that massive, barely controlled force, was indeed calmer with me present. Not tamed, never tamed, but soothed. Like a wild animal that had finally found a safe place to rest. The next few weeks fell into a pattern. Days were filled with lessons about pack governance and territory management. Vivienne proved to be an excellent, if demanding, teacher, drilling me on everything from settling disputes between pack members to managing the pack's business interests. Blood Moon controlled substantial territory and had fingers in numerous human enterprises. The wealth I'd glimpsed in my rooms was just a fraction of what the pack commanded. Knowledge is protection, Vivienne told me during one particularly grueling afternoon of financial reports. The previous Luna Queens. They focused on social matters and left the business to Adrian and his advisors. That made them vulnerable. They had status, but no real power. You need both. You're preparing me for something, I observed. Teaching me more than just etiquette and pack history. You're teaching me how to actually rule. Vivienne's expression softened slightly. You're perceptive. Yes, I'm preparing you for the reality of your position. Adrian is powerful, but he's also unstable. Not as bad as he was. The bond with you has helped tremendously. But there are still days when his wolf is difficult to control. On those days, the pack needs to see that their Luna Queen is strong enough to lead in his absence, that you're not just a figurehead, but a true co-ruler. The thought was daunting, but also thrilling. Real power, real authority, not dependent on Adrian's approval, but inherent to my position. Teach me everything, I told her. I want to be the Luna Queen this pack needs. My evenings belonged to Adrian. We'd dine together, sometimes joined by advisors or important pack members, but often alone. We'd talk about pack business, or our pasts, or nothing in particular. The bond made communication easy. We could sense each other's moods and needs without words. But we both made efforts to actually speak, to maintain the normal intimacy of marriage alongside the supernatural connection. Some nights, Adrian struggled. I'd feel through the bond when his wolf was restless, when the violence that lived in him threatened to surface. On those nights, I'd stay close, my presence soothing in ways nothing else could. Sometimes we'd shift, well, he'd shift, and I'd run beside him in human form, trying to keep pace with his massive wolf through the forests. Other times we'd simply sit together while he fought for control, my hand in his, anchoring him to his humanity. Does it hurt? I asked one night after he'd finally calmed from a particularly bad episode. When you fight your wolf like that? Yes. His voice was hoarse from growling. It's like being ripped in two. My wolf wants things, demands things, and I have to deny it without completely suppressing it. It's a constant balance, and I don't always manage it successfully. What does it want right now? He looked at me with eyes that flickered between amber and human brown. To mark you again. To remind every wolf in the territory that you're mine. To eliminate anyone who even looks at you with interest. He stopped himself. To what? To breed you. The words came out rough. My wolf wants pups, wants the proof that you're truly ours. Wants to see you carrying our children. It's instinct, primal and demanding. Heat flooded my cheeks. We'd been careful, Adrian using protections despite his wolf's protests. And what do you want? Not your wolf, you. I want, he paused, considering. I want you to be ready. Pups would tie you to me forever. And any possibility of you ever leaving if things go badly. I want you to choose that future, not have it forced on you by biology or pack pressure. The consideration in his words made my heart ache. This man who everyone saw as a monster was worried about my choices, my autonomy. I'm already tied to you forever through the bond. Pups wouldn't change that. They'd change everything, make you more vulnerable. Give my enemies potential targets. His hand found mine in the darkness. I need to make the pack more secure before we risk that. Need to root out the elements that have been working against me. Working against you? This was news. You have enemies within the pack. Every alpha has enemies. But yes, there are wolves who think I'm too unstable to lead, who've been quietly building support for a challenge. They stayed their hands while my mate bonds kept failing because they could simply wait for me to either die at a challenger's hands or step down voluntarily. But now that you've survived, now that I have a stable bond, they'll need to make a move soon if they're going to act at all. Fear spiked through me. They'll try to kill you? They'll try. Whether they succeed is another matter. He pulled me into his lap, holding me close. This is why Vivienne is teaching you to actually rule. If something happens to me, you need to be able to hold the pack together, either until I recover or until a proper succession can be arranged. Nothing's going to happen to you, I said fiercely. I won't allow it. He smiled, sad and fond. My fierce little mate. You're already thinking like a Luna Queen, protective of her alpha. But the reality is that pack politics are dangerous, especially at our level. I need you to be prepared for every possibility. The conversation left me unsettled, but more determined than ever to master everything Vivienne was teaching me. If Adrian had enemies, then I needed to know who they were and how to counter them. A Luna Queen protected her pack, and that included protecting her mate. I started paying closer attention during pack gatherings, watching for signs of dissent or unusual alliances. Vivienne helped, discreetly pointing out wolves who bore watching. The primary concern was a wolf named Darius Covenant, a powerful alpha in his own right, who controlled a significant faction within Blood Moon. He'd supported Adrian's rise to power years ago, but had grown dissatisfied with Adrian's instability and the weakness created by failed mate bonds. Darius is traditional, Vivienne explained during one of our private lessons. He believes alphas should be strong, stable, and prolific. Adrian's struggles with bonding made him look weak, which Darius can't tolerate in a leader. Your survival has complicated his plans, because now Adrian appears stable again. But Darius isn't the type to simply accept defeat. He'll be looking for other ways to undermine Adrian's authority. So what do? We demonstrate strength. Make it clear that you're not a weak link, but an asset. Show the pack that Adrian's bond with you makes him more powerful, not less. Vivienne's smile was sharp, and we watched Darius very carefully for any misstep we can use against him. I got my chance to demonstrate that strength sooner than expected. A dispute arose between two pack families over territory boundaries. Normally, Adrian would have settled it, but he was dealing with a border issue in the Eastern Territories. The families brought their case before me instead, testing the new Luna Queen. I listened carefully to both sides, asked questions Vivienne had taught me to ask, and then made a ruling that split the disputed land fairly, while giving each family something they wanted. Neither was entirely happy, but both accepted the judgment. Word spread quickly that the Luna Queen was fair and practical, not just a pretty figurehead. Adrian felt my satisfaction through the bond when he returned that evening. I heard about the Rosemont boundary dispute, he said, pulling me into his arms. Well handled. I was terrified the entire time, I admitted. Kept thinking I'd make some terrible mistake and start a blood feud. But you didn't. You did exactly what a Luna Queen should do. Applied wisdom and fairness to reach an equitable solution. He kissed me deeply. I'm proud of you, Emilia. Those words affected me more than I wanted to admit. No one had ever been proud of me before. Marcus had treated me like a burden. My mother had seen me as an obligation. But Adrian, the fearsome Alpha King, was proud of his mate for handling pack business competently. Through the bond, I felt his genuine admiration, his growing respect for my capabilities. It made me want to do more, be more, prove I was worthy of the position I'd fallen into by accident. As autumn deepened toward winter, I settled into my role as Luna Queen with increasing confidence. I helped settle disputes, managed social events, oversaw pack finances alongside Adrian's business advisors. I was good at it, I realized. the skills I'd developed surviving Marcus's household, reading people and managing conflicts, translated perfectly to pack governance. My relationship with Adrian deepened as well. The bond that had started as pure survival evolved into something more complex. I wouldn't call it love, not yet, but it was affection, respect, partnership. We understood each other in ways that went beyond the supernatural connection. We were both survivors of our own personal hells, both learning to build something new from the ashes of our past. Adrian was teaching me to fight, insisting I needed to be able to defend myself. "You may not have a wolf, but you can still learn to use weapons and leverage," he explained during one of our training sessions. Pack life is relatively civilized, but there are still dangers, especially for a Luna Queen. Some wolves might see you as a weakness to exploit. I proved surprisingly adept with a knife, my smaller size and speed compensating for my lack of shifter strength. Adrian's pride through the bond when I successfully pinned him during a sparring match was intoxicating. "You're dangerous, little mate," he said, looking up at me from where I'd managed to get my knife to his throat. I like it. Things were good, better than I'd ever imagined when I'd walked down that aisle expecting to die. But peace and pack politics never lasts forever. The challenge came on a cold November night during a pack gathering. Darius Covenant stood during the feast, his voice cutting through conversations. "Alpha King Adrian, I call formal challenge against your leadership of Blood Moon Pack." The hall fell silent. Every eye turned to Adrian, watching for his reaction. Through the bond, I felt his wolf surge forward, felt his rage at being questioned. But when he spoke, his voice was controlled, dangerous in its calmness. "On what grounds, Darius?" "On the grounds that your fitness to lead has been questionable since your ascension. The failed mate bonds demonstrated instability. While your current bond appears successful, we've had no proof that you can produce heirs. A leader who cannot continue his line is a weak leader. I propose we settle this through traditional combat. If you win, my loyalty is yours without question. If I win, leadership passes to me and you step down peacefully." It was cleverly done. Darius couldn't question Adrian's bond with me without insulting me directly, which would turn pack sentiment against him. But he could question Adrian's ability to produce heirs, which was technically a legitimate concern for pack leadership. Adrian could have refused. Alpha Kings had that right. But refusing would look weak, would suggest he doubted his ability to win. Through the bond, I felt him calculating, weighing options. "I accept your challenge," Adrian said, finally. "Combat will take place at the next full moon, 3 weeks from tonight. Traditional rules, fight to submission or death. Do you agree to these terms?" "I agree." Darius bowed mockingly. "May the mother favor the worthiest wolf." The gathering dissolved into whispers and speculation. Adrian and I left early, retiring to our rooms where his careful control finally shattered. He paced like a caged animal, his wolf so close to the surface that his eyes stayed amber, his hands shifting partially to claws. "He's been planning this," Adrian snarled, waiting for exactly the right moment to strike. "He thinks you're a weakness, thinks pregnancy would distract me or that I'd fight less effectively trying to protect my mate. Then prove him wrong." I caught his arm, stopping his pacing. "Beat him so thoroughly that no one ever questions your right to lead again." "What if I can't?" The vulnerability in his voice broke my heart. "What if my wolf loses control during the fight? What if I kill him and the pack sees me as a murderer rather than a legitimate victor? Your wolf won't lose control. I'll be there. Our bond will keep you grounded." I pulled him down to kiss me fiercely. "You're going to win, Adrian. And afterward, we're going to secure your leadership so thoroughly that no one dares challenge you again." "How?" A wild idea had been forming in my mind, risky but potentially brilliant. "Give them what Darius says you can't. Announce that I'm pregnant. Even if I'm not yet, I could be soon. We've been bonded for months now. It's plausible." That removes his primary argument and makes him look like he's challenging you just as you're about to provide an heir. Adrian stared at me. "You want to lie about being pregnant?" I want to remove his leverage. And honestly, Adrian, we both know your wolf wants pups. We've been careful, but maybe it's time to stop being careful. Maybe it's time to show the pack that we're not just surviving, we're thriving. Through the bond, I felt his desire war with his protectiveness. Pregnancy would make you vulnerable. would put a target on you. I'm already a target by virtue of being your mate. At least this way we control the narrative. I took his hands, placing them on my still flat stomach. Your wolf wants this. I'm ready for this. Let's do it, Adrian. Let's give the pack their air and secure your position permanently. His control broke then, not into violence, but into desperate passion. He made love to me with an intensity that stole my breath, his wolf howling its satisfaction as we joined without barriers for the first time. Through the bond I felt his hope, his fierce joy, his determination to protect me and any child we created. Afterward, as we lay tangled together, Adrian said softly, "If we're really doing this, if you're going to carry my pup, then I need to end Darius quickly and decisively. No drawn-out fight that might risk you or the baby." "Then train," I told him. "Train like your life depends on it, because it does. And I'll handle pack politics. Make sure everyone sees me as strong and capable, so they don't think targeting me would be an easy way to get to you." The next 3 weeks were intense. Adrian trained constantly, working with his best warriors to prepare for the challenge. I threw myself into Luna Queen duties with renewed vigor, making sure I was visible and active, demonstrating that I was an asset to Adrian's rule, rather than a liability. A week after Darius's challenge, I made my announcement at a pack gathering. "I'm pleased to share wonderful news," I said, Adrian standing proudly beside me. "The mother has blessed our bond. I'm carrying the Alpha King's heir." The pack erupted in celebration. Darius's face went carefully neutral, but through my developing awareness of pack dynamics, I could see his frustration. His challenge suddenly looked poorly timed, possibly even treasonous, given that he was threatening an alpha whose mate was newly pregnant. I wasn't actually pregnant yet, though we were certainly trying hard enough that it could be true soon. But the announcement had exactly the effect I'd hoped for. Pack sentiment shifted heavily in Adrian's favor. Challenging an alpha was acceptable, necessary even to maintain strong leadership. But challenging an alpha just as he was about to secure his line looked like naked ambition rather than legitimate concern. The nights before the full moon, I barely slept, anxiety keeping me restless despite Adrian's attempts to soothe me through the bond. What if something went wrong? What if Darius won? What if Adrian's wolf did lose control and he killed Darius, splitting the pack between those who saw it as justified and those who saw it as murder? The night of the full moon arrived cold and clear. The entire pack gathered in a natural amphitheater deep in Blood Moon territory, a sacred space used for challenges since ancient times. Torches ringed the clearing, their flames casting dancing shadows across hundreds of watching faces. I stood at the edge with Vivian, my hands clenched so tight my nails bit into my palms. Adrian and Darius faced each other in the center of the clearing, both stripped to the waist despite the freezing temperature. Adrian's scars were visible in the firelight, a map of violence across his skin. Darius was older, heavier with muscle, and his eyes held absolute confidence as he sized up his opponent. "Traditional rules," announced the pack's eldest warrior, serving as referee. "Fight until one submits or dies. The victor leads Blood Moon pack with the mother's blessing. Begin." They shifted simultaneously, bones cracking and reforming as fur rippled across skin. Adrian's wolf was massive, black as midnight with those burning amber eyes. Darius's wolf was gray and silver, slightly smaller but thick with muscle. They circled each other, growling, testing for weakness. Darius struck first, lunging for Adrian's throat. Adrian twisted away, his superior speed giving him the advantage. They clashed in a fury of teeth and claws, separating and coming together again in violent collision. Blood spattered the ground, dark against pale earth. Through the bond I felt Adrian's focus, the way he kept his wolf leashed tight, allowing ferocity but not losing himself to it. He was fighting smart, using his size and speed to wear Darius down rather than trying to end it quickly. Each strike was calculated, designed to weaken rather than kill. The fight raged for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. Darius was strong and experienced, but Adrian was something more. He was an Alpha King defending his mate, his territory, his right to rule. Every instinct drove him to victory. Finally, Adrian saw his opening. Darius overextended on a strike, And Adrian was there, jaws clamping down on the other wolf's throat, not breaking skin, not killing, but holding Darius immobile. A clear demonstration of dominance. Adrian could kill him right now if he chose. They both knew it. The entire pack knew it. Darius went limp in submission, a whine escaping his throat. Adrian held for a moment longer, making absolutely certain everyone understood who had won, then released him and stepped back. Both wolves shifted back to human form, bloody and breathing hard. "I submit," Darius said clearly, dropping to one knee. "Alpha King Adrian Blackthorne is the rightful leader of Blood Moon Pack. My loyalty is his without question." The pack erupted in howls of approval. Adrian stood over Darius for a moment, then offered his hand and pulled the older wolf to his feet. "Your loyalty is accepted. Serve Blood Moon well, Darius, and your past challenge is forgiven." It was masterfully done, showing both strength in victory and mercy in triumph. The pack saw an alpha who could defeat challengers, but also one who valued loyalty over vengeance. As Adrian walked toward me, still covered in blood but victorious, I felt such fierce pride through the bond that it nearly brought me to my knees. He pulled me into his arms, heedless of the blood, and kissed me deeply. "It's done," he murmured against my lips. "No more challenges, no more questions about my fitness to lead." "You were magnificent," I whispered back. Every inch the Alpha King they needed to see. The celebration that followed lasted until dawn. Pack members drinking and dancing and reaffirming their loyalty to their Alpha and Luna. Adrian and I slipped away eventually, exhausted and ready for peace. In our rooms, as I cleaned blood from his wounds and marveled that none were serious, Adrian said softly, "I couldn't have done that without you. The bond kept me centered, kept my wolf from losing control. You saved me, Emilia. Again." "We saved each other," I corrected. "That's what mates do." 2 months later, I made another announcement, this time with absolute certainty rather than hopeful deception. I was truly pregnant, carrying the heir Adrian's pack had demanded. The news was met with overwhelming joy, securing our position beyond any possible challenge. As my belly grew with our child, I watched Adrian transform. The darkness that had haunted him began to recede, replaced by cautious hope and fierce protectiveness. He was gentler, more patient, working with his advisors to strengthen the pack through prosperity rather than fear. Our daughter was born on a spring morning, small and perfect with her father's amber eyes and my dark hair. Adrian wept when he held her, this fearsome Alpha King reduced to tears by a tiny baby. Through the bond I felt his overwhelming love, his vow to be better than his own father had been, to build a pack where strength and compassion could coexist. "What should we name her?" he asked, unable to look away from our daughter's face. "Hope," I said without hesitation, because that's what she represents. Proof that even the darkest situations can lead to light, that broken things can heal, that love can grow in the most unexpected places. Adrian looked at me then, his eyes bright with unshed tears. "I love you, Emilia. I should have said it before now, but I love you. You took a monster and saw a man. You took a curse and made it a blessing. You gave me everything I thought I'd lost forever." "I love you too," I replied, meaning it with every fiber of my being. The man I'd feared on my wedding night had become my partner, my protector, my home. And I'd do it all again. Every terrifying moment, because it led me here, to you, to us, to her. Our daughter squirmed in Adrian's arms, making small sounds that had us both smiling like fools. Outside our windows, Blood Moon Pack celebrated the birth of their princess, their future. The pack that had been built on fear was slowly transforming into one built on loyalty earned rather than demanded. My stepfather had forced me to marry the Alpha Beast to settle his debts, sending me to what everyone assumed would be my death. Instead, I'd found a mate, a purpose, a family. I'd discovered strength I didn't know I possessed, and love I'd never thought to experience. The Beast of Blood Moon had changed after our wedding night, softened by the bond we shared and the healing power of being truly seen. But I'd changed too, transformed from a frightened girl into a woman who could stand beside an Alpha King as an equal. We were both different now, both better, both learning daily what it meant to love someone broken and build something beautiful from the pieces. And as I watched Adrian cradle our daughter with such tender reverence, I knew that whatever darkness still lurked in him would never consume us. Because I was his light, his anchor, his mate in the truest sense. And he was mine, this complicated, damaged, magnificent man who'd been willing to fight the whole world just to keep me safe. My name is Emilia Blackthorne, Luna Queen of Blood Moon Pack. And this is how I stopped being a sacrifice and became a queen. How I turned a forced marriage into true love. And how I proved that even beasts can change when they finally find their missing piece. Our story wasn't a fairy tale. It was messy and complicated and born from desperation rather than choice. But it was ours, written in blood and moonlight and the fierce determination to make something good from terrible circumstances. And as I stood there with my mate and our child, surrounded by a pack that had learned to love rather than just obey, I realized that sometimes the best stories aren't the ones that start with happily ever after. They're the ones that fight their way there through darkness and doubt, earning every moment of joy with hard-won battles and harder-won trust. They're the stories that prove love isn't just a feeling, but a choice, made daily, to see the best in someone even when the worst is staring you in the face. The Alpha Beast had forced me into marriage, but after that wedding night, everything changed. He became Adrian, my mate, my love, my home, and I became strong enough to stand beside him, not despite his darkness, but because of what we built together in spite of it. That, in the end, was the real magic. Not the bond or the power or the crown, but the simple, profound truth that two broken people could find each other in the darkness and build something whole from their shattered pieces. And we did. Against all odds, despite every expectation, we did.